What if everybody is wrong about retirement? All right, this is chapter 1 from my new book, Relax and Retire, and you should get it. 165 pages of just crushing data that's going to crush your world if you're a negative Nelly. All right, in fact, I'll put the link in the book. Look, I'm a #1 bestseller. Your old buddy Josh, #1. We're #1. We're #1. You're #2. Take that, Obama. Take that. So this is an important chapter. This is chapter 1. All right, not the introduction, chapter 1. And I hope this makes sense because this is critically important. I've read this 1,000 times a Sunday, and it seems to make sense to me, but I worry that it only makes sense to me and no one else. But I've had a number of people research it, or not research it, review my stuff, and it seems that they get it too. So I hope, because this is critically important. All right, total expenditures over 75. See this chart? What do you think it's showing? Think about it for a second, because some serious spells are about to get broken. All right, so look at this. 1984, total expenditures, 10,000. 2004, 25,000. 2019, over 40,000. You may think the chart shows that for people over the age of 75, their spending went up from 10,000 to 40,000 from 1984 to 2019, which would be an increase of 3.88% a year. Comparatively, the actual inflation rate during these years was 2.61. So it appears that people over 75 increased spending significantly more than inflation. Oh my goodness, Josh, you've been telling us otherwise. You said spending goes down in retirement. In fact, if we dive deeper into the data from the BLS, we find healthcare spending grew by 4.39% a year during that time, which is 70% more than the rate of inflation. Healthcare spending went up by 4.39. Inflation is 2.61. Logically, then, you can conclude that because older people spend more on healthcare, and healthcare costs have grown much faster than the rate of inflation, older people will increase spending not just with inflation, but well above it. But to draw that conclusion is wrong. The problem is that the households that were 75 years old in 2019 were not the same households that were 75 in 1984. People that are over 75 in 2019 were in their 40s in 1984. If I'm 45 years old, it doesn't matter to me what a 75-year-old is spending their money on when it comes to my retirement planning. What matters to me is what I'm spending my money on. Remember, retirement planning models are based on your future cash flow projections using your spending today as the baseline to build from. I hope this makes sense because this is so critically important, man. For example, I'm 52. I pay well over $2,000 a month for health insurance for my family of 6, and that doesn't include other health-related stuff we have to pay for, braces, prescription drugs. Will my healthcare costs grow at a clip of 4.39% in a year in the future, as it has done in the past 3 decades? Maybe. But my baseline number will shrink significantly as my kids get older and on their own insurance. They'll drop off mine. This is what the chart above doesn't reflect. It simply shows what a typical 75-year-old household spent every year, 5 years from 1984 to 2019. So a 75-year-old household in 1984 spent $10,000. A 75-year-old household in 2019 spent $40,000. That's all it shows. All right. But it doesn't show any differences in the spending by households as they age. A better model would be to compare the spending of a 45 to 54-year-old household in 1984 to a 75-plus household in 2019, essentially tracking the spending habits of that household as they grow older. This is called a longitudinal study, which you can learn about here. The importance of this type of study, especially when it comes to retirement planning, is that quote, research has repeatedly examined the same individuals to detect any changes that might occur over a period of time. They're not taking the aggregate. They're taking the same people, saying, how is your spending changing as you age? An example of a longitudinal study is Sudipto Banerjee's cumulative out-of-pocket health expense after the age of 70. Quote, this study estimates how much retirees spend on out-of-pocket healthcare costs after 70 until their death. Unlike many other studies, it includes only expenses for healthcare services actually used and is based on self-reported expenses, not of actual people, not on projections of hypothetical individuals. This right here is not a longitudinal study. All right. These type of studies, the longitudinal studies, are important because they show the actual spending patterns of people as they go through their life cycle. Unfortunately, the Consumer Expenditure Survey, which this study is based on, doesn't do this for specific individuals. But we can do the next best thing, which is to take a cohort of a certain age group and follow that cohort as they get older. The chart below shows a cohort of 45 to 54-year-old households, and you can see they spent $28,696 in 1984. $28,696 in 1984. All right, they were 45 to 54. They spent basically $30,000. In 1994, the cohort was 55 to 64-year-old. 10 years, they increased their age from 45 to 55, and they spent $33,000. 2004, they went from 55 to 64-year-old household to 65 to 74-year-old household. They spent $35,000 base. I can't remember exactly what it was, $33,000. And so it went from 28 to 33 to 36, and then it stopped at age 75 as 36,000. And this is in real dollars, by the way, in 1984 dollars, 2014 dollars. So you see, they went from 28,000 to 36,000. Over the 30 years starting in 1984, when they were in their 40s, and through 2014, when they were over 75 years old, the actual spending of this cohort increased from 28,000 to 36,000 in real dollars, an increase of 0.88% a year. That's it, less than 1%. Whereas before, we're showing you they had an increase of 3.88, I think, if memory serves. 3.88. Significantly lower spending as they aged. Now, to put it in perspective, let's say it's 1984 and you are 45 years old. You come to my office wanting me to model a retirement plan. You tell me your spending last year is $28,696, which is what that group did. And you want to make sure you're saving enough in order to meet your future expenses for when you retire in 20 years. You also tell me you can invest $2,000 a year into a retirement account, which is 7% of your total spending. Because remember, we got $28,696 is what we spent in 1984. We're going to save 7% of our total, $2,000 a year, into a retirement account. We want to model our spending to make sure we can spend that same level of spending as we age. We run a quick calculation and show that in 20 years, with a 3% inflation rate, your spending will grow to $51,828. If we use the 4% rule, you'll need $1.295 million at retirement to cover your spending needs. If you can only invest $200,000 a year, that means you'll need to have $381,000 saved today, assuming a 6% rate of return. Of course, if you can contribute $10,000 a year, you only need to have $289,000 in your retirement account today. Now let's come back to reality. This guy was spending $28,000 a year. There was absolutely no way he had anywhere near $300,000 in his investments in 1984. Also, there's no way he was going to be able to invest $10,000 a year, given that he would be over a third of his total expenditures. So he was doomed, right? No, because as the chart above showed, in reality, this guy's spending did not grow at a 3% inflation. It turned out his spending in 2014 would be $36,000, much less than what the retirement projections, $51,000. Why is that? Because as people age, their spending changes. We can prove this by using the BLS data. In the chart below, you can follow spending patterns of the households in 5-year increments. 45 to 54. So you see 45 to 54, 55 to 64, 65 to 74, over 75 or 75. Notice that when the households stay in the same age group, 45 to 54, they did increase their spending due to inflation. For instance, in 1984, the 45 to 50-year-old household spent $28,000, whereas in 1989 it went up to 1989 went up to $36,000. But by 1994, even factoring in inflation, that household, which was now in the 55 to 65-year-old category, spent less than they did in 1989 in real dollars. I'm telling you. You see that? They go from in the same cohort, the same age group, 45 to 55, 45 to 54, I should say. They went from basically 30,000 to 36. When they aged the next cohort, 55 to 64, their spending went down, but it went up again in the same cohort. Why would that be? Spending categories. Food drops. Housing costs drop. Transportation drops. Social Security, saving money for retirement, Social Security pensions, retirement contributions drop. Look at the chart above and notice how food expenses dropped, housing costs have dropped, transportation dropped, entertainment, gas, apparel, contributions to Social Security all dropped too. These costs are dropping even though the price of these goods are increasing with inflation. The price is right. Yeah, there you go. The price is right. Come on down. Weird, huh? Why is this happening? One, average household size dropped from 3 to 2.2. As I write this, I'm 52, my wife is 48. We have a household now of 4, which is down from the 6 we had just a few years ago, as our 2 oldest have gone off to college. In 5 years, when we are in the 55 plus category, my youngest will be gone and will then be a household of 2. How much food do 2 people consume relative to 6, 2 of which are teenage boys? Our insurance bills will decline too. Right now, with 6 drivers on our auto insurance, again, 2 of whom are teenage boys, insurance costs are through the roof. Once the kids are on their own, though, well, guess what? Insurance costs drop. Another reason, mortgages get paid down. Look at the drop in mortgage interest paid. 1989 to 1994. One can make an argument the reason interest is lower is because of lower interest rates. Maybe. But you'd have to explain why this happens regardless of varying interest rate cycles. Never mind that most people have a fixed 30-year note anyway. The correct reason for mortgage interest dropping is that debt is being paid down, and thus interest charges are lower as you pay down debt. Less spending on apparel. Again, with less kids in the house, households spend less on clothing. A secondary consideration too is that the older you get, the less you care about the clothes you wear. So write this. I have a t-shirt on which I bought years ago. Pants that are at least 5 years old. Tennis shoes that probably should have been thrown away years ago. You get the picture. Apparel expenditures. Mortgage interest expenditures. Look at that. All right, let's keep going. Again, let's see. Even entertainment costs. My youngest loves sports. We attend a number of Hawks, Falcons, and Brave games each year. We've taken our entire family to see the Bruins in Charlotte, Nashville, and Tampa. We've gone to Philadelphia Flyers and Phillies games when we lived in the Philly area. I even took my oldest to Boston to see the Bruins battle the hated Canadians at the Gillette Center for the stadium for the Winter Classic. While my wife and I will continue to go to some sports games once the kids are at the house, we both love minor league baseball, for instance, we certainly won't spend as much on entertainment as we do now. Entertainment costs, again, drop from the 45 to 54-year-old cohort to the 55 to 64. Now, there are some expenses that increase as people age, property taxes. But that's a good thing, right? That means the home values are going up. Healthcare costs increase. Shocking, huh? Healthcare costs increase as you age. Who would have thought? Went from 1,300 to 2,100. I hope you're seeing how this works. The older you get, the less you spend because your household shrinks, you pay off debt, and you just consume less. It's really that simple. Now let's compare the 55 to 64-year-old household in 1999, that same household 5 years later, which is now in the group of 65 to 74. Once again, total expenditures went from $39,000 to $36,000. All right, and you can see why. Same thing. Transportation costs went down. How much they're putting into their 401k, Social Security went down. Food went down. Housing went down. Healthcare went up. Healthcare went up. Just like before, housing costs drop because interest is reduced as mortgages get paid. Transportation costs drop too, which makes sense because as people age, they drive less, leading to less maintenance and less finance charges. Notice the last bar in the category, the last graph in the bar right here. These are expenses for contributions to Social Security, pensions, and retirement accounts. These expenses dropped way off. Why? Because many of these people in this age group have retired or are no longer contributing to retirement accounts. The big exception, again, is healthcare expenses. This expense increased nearly 50%. But all in all, total expenses dropped even while including a whopping 50% increase in healthcare costs. And we'll compare the next age group, 65 to 74. Another drop in spending, even though inflation is making the cost of goods go up. Obviously, all these people are going bankrupt, right? Well, it turns out public assistance dropped off. Ooh, kind of weird. And while home ownership dropped from 82 to 80%, homeowners without a mortgage increased from 52 to 66. Home ownership in the 65 to 74-year-old category, 82%. Without a mortgage, 52%. Home ownership dropped from 82 to 80 as you got older, but the number of people without a mortgage jumped up significantly. Change in net worth. What? What you see above is that while household expenditures dropped, it certainly wasn't due to losing one's home and going bankrupt as the fearmongers would have you believe. Net worth increased substantially over these years. Remember, 80% of households over 75 or over own their own homes. Households age 75 or older own their own homes, and 66% of them have no mortgage. Let me repeat that. Over half of all households over 75 years old own their homes with no debt. They paid their mortgages and magically their expenses dropped. Crazy, right? Let's wrap this up. We clearly see with real-world data from the BLS, as people age, they spend less, even when factoring in inflation. As much as I've pleaded for it, I've yet to have anyone provide me any data that shows people spending more as they get older because of inflation. It doesn't exist. So to structure a retirement plan based on these false assumptions inherently makes your retirement plan faulty. Why do that to yourself? The next chapter we'll talk about the persistent threat of inflation. I hope this makes sense. You just look at the data, dude. Spending category, let's just go back to here. I'm going to show you because this right here. When I saw this right there, if you're 45 to 54, your spending is 28,000. It increases when you get older, and then it kind of levels off. But check this out. From 45 to 54, from the first 5 years of the decade, it jumped up, right? I mean, it jumps up in that same time frame due to inflation. As your households shrink, as your mortgage get paid down, as other things go away, your other debt, your other expenditures, you put money in your 401k, your entertainment costs go down, your transportation costs go down. As you get older, all that stuff declines. You're not the same house. So I cannot stress this. I hope this makes sense. This household right here is not the same as this household right here. It's not. This household right here should be looked at what he was when he was 1984, 45. Because this is static. And financial planning, retirement plan is dynamic. It changes over time. 100%. As you age out, you're changing. So to say a 75-year-old household group is the same today as it will be 40 years from now is stupid. Because we got to say, what is that household group younger? And that household's Josh, your old buddy Josh with 6 people. Now 4, soon to be 2. It's not the same person at 75. Hope this makes sense. We'd love your thoughts. So put a link in the show notes. Buy the book. Make me a #1 bestseller, baby. All right, we'll see you.